Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Cyber CEO, a platform where we speak to industry leaders, founders, and CEOs within cyber to give them the opportunity to raise awareness around what life is like at the top and tell us a little bit more about their organizations. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Mark Taylor, who's the founder and CTO of Chorus, an MSSP based in Bristol. Mark, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, very good. It's busy times, so can't complain. But yeah, looking forward to the next couple of months.
Sounds super busy your end, which I'm sure we'll kind of dive into. But for those who don't know who you are, would you like to give us, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, so I founded Chorus. We just actually, what was it, September now? We just passed 24 years we've been in existence. So a long old time. I feel it, obviously, like most founders. So no, it's been good. Enjoyed it. Started the business as a traditional MSP. And then we moved very much Microsoft focused, transitioned through into Dynamics. And then the last sort of 4 or 5 years, we've transitioned again. And now we've moved into the cyberspace, but specifically with that Microsoft flavor around it.
Okay, awesome. We'll come on to the whole Microsoft piece soon, I'm sure. But let's kind of wind it all the way back to 24 years. That's a long time. Doing great. What led you? I mean, what were you doing before Chorus?
Oh, great question. So a couple of things. Bizarrely, I was kind of well away from IT for the first few years of my career. I was actually an air traffic controller for about 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And then came out of air traffic control, and I'd always had an interest in IT, so I ended up going back to that. And I ended up working for a company. It doesn't exist anymore, part of Fujitsu now, but used to be called ICL, big UK IT company. Did a lot of work for the Ministry of Defence in the UK on large scale IT systems. And after a couple of years of doing that, kind of thought to myself, oh, I know I can do this better, and decided to set up Chorus, really. So yeah, like most founders come out with that attitude of, yeah, I know how to do this better than everybody else, and then learn the hard way.
Yeah, yeah, and you realise you don't get everything.
Not quite.
Yeah, every day's a learning day. Oh, I
Indeed.
didn't know that actually. Air traffic control. What?
No,
That
indeed.
obviously completely different. 7
Completely
years.
different. Yeah. I was, one of those classic teenagers. Really spent a lot of time trying to be a pilot initially, and had some success with that, but didn't quite get where I wanted to be. And then it was like, what do I do now? And then somebody said to me, well, have you thought about air traffic control? I was like, well, that sounds interesting. So I went and did that for a few years and trained to do that, but didn't quite pan out for me. It's a long story, but didn't quite pan out. And after 7 years, stepped out, went back to IT.
Okay, yeah, go back into IT because you get to watch the people fly the planes, not fly them yourself.
Indeed,
I can
and they've had their own IT issues recently, haven't they? So they needed IT there as well.
I love it. What was it like at that point where you was like, okay, cool, I'm going to pull the trigger, I'm gonna create this business and become self-employed?
Yeah, to be honest with you, obviously, again, yeah, let's be realistic. There's a lot younger then, as most of us are when we set up businesses initially the first time, and you're a little bit gung ho, and you're fired up and excited and ready to go for this. Yeah, it's going to be great, and that's exactly how it felt at the time. And I certainly don't. Even now, been through the slightly longer version of it, I would never discourage anybody from who's tempted to go out there and try that stuff, because you certainly, I'm in that camp of you don't want to look back with regret, so give it a go. And we jumped out. We were very fortunate. It was myself and a colleague, and because we'd been doing some work with the MOD, we were lucky to pick up a bit of work initially, consultancy, that just kind of gave us a little bit of a step off to get going. And then really within a year, we were kind of like, okay, let's get into the SMB market. This is underserved. With good quality IT at that point, we felt, and we could definitely bring our skills to that space. So that was what we set out to do, and that was in 99, 2000.
Okay, awesome. I'd like to potentially identify if there's like 3 key points that someone would need. If they tick those boxes, I suppose we can kind of discuss it now. Are there 3 points you think someone should have for them to then start their own business? Is it like, for example, 1, you need that passion, that fire, that energy, that belief around what you want to do, and I don't know, 2 other drivers? Do you think there's a certain criteria people should think about?
I think it's probably variable by personality type, industry. There's going to be obviously various factors. I think for me, we've probably already hit on what I consider the primary one, which is you've got to have that internal fire to really believe in yourself, because to be honest with you, you are going to get kicked. I guarantee it. And when you've been doing it a few years, you're going to get kicked in ways you didn't even know you were going to get kicked when you started. So and therefore, if you don't have that real inner fire that you can get this done and keep pushing through it, something will trip you up. So yeah, that's definitely, I would say, the primary thing. After that, yeah, it's about knowing what you're bringing to the space. That belief that you've identified something that you truly think you can bring in, and that people will be interested in, either as individuals or as businesses, and then finding your ways to make people aware of that. I think that's probably one of the longer term lessons that I'm sure lots of people learn. I know I did. Is that I'm a techie by background, and therefore have next to zero skills when it comes to things like sales and marketing, and people can't buy what they don't know about, I think, is the classic description. So yeah, there are the kind of those things that you won't know when you start, that you're just going to have to be determined to get your head into and learn.
Yeah, that's some good advice. Have that fire. Be prepared to be kicked.
Yeah.
All over the place.
All over the place.
Go into a room and get dragged from pillar to post.
Yeah.
Have that passion. And then also, really good point. People need to know about what you're doing. If they don't, they can't buy it. Something
Best product in the world.
Pardon?
You still can't sell it. Best product in the world, and you still can't sell it if people don't know about it.
Exactly.
So yeah, and I think especially when you're a founder and you have knowledge in a particular space, the likelihood that you have knowledge in the space of marketing and or sales is probably quite low, and therefore you've got to have a really clear view on how you're going to plug that gap. Are you going to, or somebody else who does have knowledge? Are you going to try and build that knowledge yourself? There's no right or wrong answers. Absolutely not, in my opinion. But you do need to think about what you're going to do, how you're going to handle that.
Yeah, and I think one thing we could kind of raise awareness on is the evolution of your product or your business. You might have this perfect idea. I'm sure we'll come onto it, of course. But that idea is going to evolve, it's going to develop, it's going to change, it's going to segue a little bit. So you don't have to have the perfect product to go to market. You just have to have the vision. But I know with Trident, it's kind of segued a little bit. It stayed within cybersecurity, but the different branches within that kind of trickled all the way down. So, so let's talk about Chorus. What do you do? What's Chorus?
Yeah, so we are, as I say, kind of originally a Discord, and still, a significant portion of the business is that original managed services provider. So very traditional B2B, first, second, third line outsourced IT. Literally what everybody would know as a traditional managed services provider in the IT space. And I guess the only thing I would say different about us is that we always had that Microsoft focus from day one. So literally from day one, to give you the examples, we've never been a VMware house. We don't do Citrix. We don't do in the modern era. We don't do AWS. We do Microsoft, and we do that well. And I think that's probably been one of the things for me, is that I've always had a view that, okay, we're going to do good stuff, but what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what are considered the best of breed products in the spaces we want to play in, and we're going to be good at those. So we're not going to just deal with every supplier of firewalls in the world. We're not going to deal with every cloud supplier. We're going to pick the ones we think are good. We're going to skill up in that, and we're going to be known for and good at that. And that's kind of always been a core principle for me. Been challenged on it numerous times over the years. Two of those kicks probably over the years that people have told me I'm a little bit crazy. But no, I mean, and I think obviously, again, to your point earlier, you can't know what's ahead of you. So there were definitely points, I think, in the past when people would have looked at me, for instance, when we made the decision to just do Hyper-V and not do VMware. And people unquestionably looked at me as like I was insane. And I'm just kind of like, look, I'm not knocking that product. That product is clearly great. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as popular as it is. And that stands true of anything today. But we can't be experts in everything. So we want to be experts in the things we're good at, and that for us, we chose that to be to Hyper-V, and in due course they go up. And I think now where we are, what we see is that, yes, there are three true hyperscale cloud providers, and you've got lots of choice, but actually Microsoft is very, very, very good, and you need to be very skilled at it to be very good at it, and that's what we can bring to our customers.
Okay. Okay. Without talking about Microsoft too much, but
Mm.
what are the pros? What's so good about it? If I didn't know anything about the differences between different platforms or operating systems or anything, what are the benefits of using it?
I think for me, it's the obvious stuff. It's just the interoperability. It's that classic, who knows their own stuff better than the people who make it.
Mm.
And I think, obviously for us with that security hat on today, we have that classic conversation that I hear almost every security vendor and expert talking about, which is that we all want access to data. We all want access to as much data as possible in order to make good informed decisions, detect unusual things and all that kind of stuff. And I think you can't help but look at that version of it today and go, well, I'm pretty sure Microsoft have got quite a lot of data. So for us, it was kind of like, yeah, okay, there are things here that just make sense. The pieces lined up, and it was kind of like, well, that's clearly the direction we should head in. So yeah, it's something like that today. Really, it's just that scale and interoperability is a strong set of cards for customers to be looking at and saying, what can I do with this and make the most of it.
Sure does give you that leverage in the market. We speak with people who are just starting to start a business and they want to be Microsoft partners. And it's hard, I suppose, which we come on to this year. It's been a bit difficult for many organizations. We've seen redundancies across the board. So for you to already have that presence in that market share is obviously beneficial for you guys. So that's good. I'm glad to hear it. How have you found this year as the leader of the business? Obviously, you guys are doing great. It's fantastic. But have you found it challenging, or what's it been like?
Yeah. Well, first thing I should correct because I'll get shot if I don't. So we definitely have an MD today. I held the MD role for about 21 years, and then decided to take a step back and hand it over to our MD today, Nikki. And we're saying, that was a good decision. It was a hard decision. And another one of those decisions that sometimes founders face. Hit me, in ways I didn't expect when we actually did it. But fantastic decision. At a certain point, at a certain scale, and it will be different for everybody. We felt you need somebody who's a much more, quite frankly, a people person. Running a business at scale is managing a lot of people, and I'm the first to put my hand up and say I'm not a people person at heart. That's not me. It was the right decision, and therefore, I think, again, and that's one of those crucial business skills. Knowing who to have in the right places at the right times. That's all part of it. And now I've forgotten your question because you got me sidetracked there. So what did you want me to answer for you?
Oh, it's good. We can keep on this slide. The question was how we found this year, but I'm guessing it's.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, no, and yeah, that's it. It's a good question. Look, this year's been interesting. I'll phrase it like that. It's because as you rightly highlighted, there have definitely been some large scale cuts globally this year. We've seen everybody do it in the tech space. And I think, I don't think anybody can look at that and not go, these very large organizations clearly have a lot of foresight and can see things in the market that the rest of us sometimes can't. And I think that we're probably starting to see now, the way I've sort of talked about it with others that I speak to, is that it feels like there's a little bit of malaise in the market. It's just a little bit gray. I don't know how else to describe it. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just something in the middle. And I think it almost feels like there's that hesitation where everybody's waiting to see, is this going to go left or is this going to go right? I'm not quite sure, but let's just wait a little bit longer before we make a decision. So that's how it feels at the moment. So it's been a good year in the sense of, for us personally, we've been working hard this year to develop relationships. We're working with some global distributors now to get our security services out into the market space. So for us particularly, we've been able to continue doing that, and so we've been active and doing good stuff and moving forward. So it's been a positive year for us, no question of that.
Yeah.
But we can still sense that in the wider market there is that, like I say, that little bit of sense of malaise.
Okay, yeah, I agree. It feels like there's a slight lag.
Yeah.
But the Gray defines it perfectly. I feel. But you're right. You need to capitalize on these moments and just focus on, right, okay, well, if people aren't buying or people aren't selling, what else can we do? And that's building those relationships, right? Solidifying your offering and the long-term relationships. So
Definitely.
you've always got to pivot, right?
Mhm.
One of the questions I'd like to ask is what's been one of the hardest things to do? And I can ask you it again in a second, but you mentioned obviously you got an MD, and handing over that responsibility is like handing over your baby, right?
Mhm.
At what point do you think, as a business leader, you don't know when's a good time to actually, I'm going to bring in, I don't know, someone in HR, I'm going to bring in an MD, I'm going to bring in a sales director or whatever. At what point do you think, as a business owner, you need to look at that?
Yeah. Yeah, the classic question, and certainly experienced it in various guises quite a few times over the years. The honest answer is I don't think there are clear markers, and I think that's probably the big takeaway. Don't feel you're looking something for really distinctive, and if we hit this or if we do that, then now's the right time to do X and get that role in. It probably isn't like that. You need to take a look at what your experiences are a business. So as an example, for instance, you when you recognize that you need to bring in people who have got significantly better people management skills than you, what that could be a business of 30 staff who, but your staff are in a particular market or a particular skill set. That means you just need really good people management from day one. But there will be other businesses who can get to 50 or 100 before they actually need that level of engagement, because again, depending on what those staff are doing day to day, their level of engagement within teams, etc., might be different. So I think it's going to be different for everybody. I think, definitely for us, we've reached certain points. We've pulled the trigger on certain roles and gone, I don't know, for instance, let's say we decided, many years ago for the first time that we needed a senior sales role. So went out and got a senior sales role. And then actually subsequently you just think, no, we didn't get that right, did we? And again, that's another big thing for me, is that kind of like you're gonna get stuff wrong way more than you want to. You're convinced you won't get it wrong at the start, but you will. And it's not being afraid to recognize that and being as quick as you can. You can't always do it, amazing, but be as quick as you can to go, no, I didn't get that decision right. Let's pivot back and let's fix something and to go a different path. So, yeah, I think it will vary per business, but yeah, don't push yourself too hard. Make the decision, and if you got it wrong, fix it.
Yeah, there's going to be a little bit. It's probably totally the wrong wording, because we're talking about people, right? People's jobs, but there's a little bit of trial by fire and trial by error. But I think you raise a good point. Is obviously it's dependent on your business and your own skills, right? As a business owner, you probably need to understand where you're lacking, where your strengths are, and then just raise awareness and just kind of keep one eye on the horizon, because whether that is not particularly great at sales, keep your eye on the horizon for someone who is good at sales. And then the successful businesses that we all know and hear of, it's not just down to one person, right? It's down to
No.
team.
No.
But you'll eventually find an absolute superstar, and that's probably when you think, okay, wow, this person's awesome. We need
It's
them.
always down to tier. And the other important thing to know about that is that it's very, very rare in my experience that when it doesn't work out with an individual, that it's somehow the quotes fault of the individual. It's not. I've worked with plenty of people over the years now who didn't necessarily quite fit with us for whatever reason. Sometimes not always possible to put your finger on it, but they've moved on, and I've stayed in touch with them, and they've had phenomenal success. I mean, just phenomenal success in what on paper might look like an almost identical role to the one we had them in. And therefore the whole point is that the people themselves are usually always intrinsically capable. That doesn't mean to say you slot into every single role with the same job title on it. It's going to depend on the market, the space, the company, where the company is in its own journey at that point in time, because obviously who we were 12 years ago is not who we were 6 years ago. So yeah, look, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's very rarely about the individuals. It's always just about, at a point in time, does a particular individual fit in a particular role at a particular time? That's it, usually, no more, no less.
Yeah, good point. So what does the future look like for Chorus then? You mentioned just before this, I think you're spending 99% of November abroad as a business. What does the future look like?
Yeah, definitely. The cyber focus in particular for and apart from the obvious reasons of obviously it's been a hot topic in the market for a fair while now. I think the reality is that we've pivoted as a business, in a way that I wouldn't have called probably certainly 5-6 years ago, is that our go-to-market strategy now is very much about partners and partner channel. So we're becoming much more of a channel business, providing our services to other MSPs who then want to deliver it to their customers, and that's just not something that was even circulating for me
Yeah,
6 years ago.
yeah.
So and we're that transition has obviously taken place over the last few years, and now very much that is our go-to. So, and that's one of the reasons we're traveling so much in November, because we're out in those various European countries, Germany and Italy and Norway, etc., meeting with partners. And that's just not a scenario that I would have painted. So for us, that's definitely the future. It's that cyber focus. It's that channel model. It's working with other MSPs. I'm hoping, obviously, that having been one and having that background ourselves means we bring some experience to that table in terms of what it is to be an MSP, and that what the challenges are in that space. Time will tell on that one. But again, without obviously wanting to play, we are committed to that Microsoft line. Our experience is that what we're seeing is that the wider market, Microsoft has done their classic, what they're very, very good at, which is getting the message out. And I think we're starting to see a lot of end customers are looking at their licensing estates and what they have in front of them, and they're going, I think the Microsoft security story kind of feels like it fits for me. And then they ask the question, well, hang on a minute, where am I going to get the service for that? And they start speaking to their MSP. So, and then you get into the challenges as an MSP of, do I do that myself? Do I partner? Do I use something totally third party in a way? There's kind of those questions that an MSP starts to ask itself when it hits that question.
Okay, cool. Well, it sounds exciting. And that, again, the business has pivoted right from the very first expectation of what the chorus is going to be. So, okay, cool. What's a total curveball here? What's your thoughts on AI in the current landscape? Obviously,
Yeah.
AI often.
Yeah. So it's a good question. It's a good question, because obviously it is very much everywhere right now. No doubt about that. And we're definitely we're hands-on with parts of it. We definitely have experience in that space, and I'm quite sure we're going to get more coming up. I think for me, it's very, very early days. I think some of those demos obviously look phenomenal when you actually see them. However, if being perfectly honest, our practical experience today is, oof, that's the odd gem that comes along, as opposed to the 90% kind of ratio of good stuff that comes out. So I think we're definitely early days. I think it's going to be very interesting. I think that hopefully it comes good and it proves to be as useful as all of us hope, because I think we all know we've got kind of systemic challenges in the market. Yeah. For you guys, obviously, you'll particularly see it. Recruitment is a challenge for all businesses right now. And there are various factors that drive that. We could talk all day long about the wider geopolitical challenges we all face. We've got systemic challenges around the working age population declining over the next few years. Well, actually continuing to decline unless something radically alters. So, and those things are going to continue to put additional pressure on the workforce. And of course, the question is then, as a bit, well, where's the workforce coming from then? And of course, today everybody quite rightly comes in and they have very, very clear expectations of their own career progression that I think even 20-30 years ago, people wanted careers and wanted progression. I'm not sure it was quite as well honed or refined as the younger generation is today. And so when you put all those ingredients into the pot, you've got to have really clear answers about how you're going to solve the challenges.
Yeah.
That AI is part of that, because it's not about, for me, AI is never about replacing people. And I think, to be fair again to Microsoft, their marketing in that space is phenomenal, because, they've obviously used the moniker Copilot for everything. And I think that sums it up brilliantly. It's always going to be a supporting tool set to people doing their activities, not a replacement tool set. And in the security space in particular as well, there's significant opportunity for that. So it's exciting. It's interesting. It's going to be one to watch. Actually, hands on keyboards right now, I'm a little bit, yeah, we're not there yet. But you know, hopefully we're not too far away.
Okay, that's good. You're echoing what a few people are saying. It's to alleviate anyone's concerns of thinking, oh gosh, my role's going to disappear. A lot of industry leaders are thinking, and people on the ground as well, are thinking, actually, let's work together with this technology and just make things a lot different, or a lot more efficient. But to the people that are actually using this stuff and are worried about their jobs, they need to have that awareness. Well, actually, I'm going to have to adapt a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So anything analytical, we can start using this AI to kind of do, but then you need to kind of do everything on the back end. So yeah, it is super early days. I think, there are steps that businesses need to take to incorporate it before it starts at that next level, right?
And definitely, and I think we over the years, IT, we've had various flavors of the phrase kind of rubbish in, rubbish out, and I think actually what we're all going to find in the next few years is that AI is the ultimate example of rubbish in, rubbish out. It is going to feed off of the material you give it, and therefore if you give it that rubbish, it will produce some stuff you don't want to see. And therefore it won't be as helpful as you're expecting. I've seen a lot of stuff lately. Obviously, as of yesterday, officially Microsoft 365 Copilot launched. As it transpired, with some very specific caveats around it as to who could get access to it. But hey, it did officially launch in GA yesterday. But one of the things we're seeing with that, and has been very clear already, is that various phrases are being used, but the health of your data. One of the things that the M365 Copilot does, obviously, is kind of the first activity it has to undertake is to index your entire tenant of data. Every email, every document, every file, everything in your tenant gets indexed, obviously, because that's how AI feeds on what you've got. Yeah, no surprises there. I think what a lot of organizations are probably going to be waking up to pretty rapidly over this year is that, hang on a minute, we've been in existence for 10, 15, 20 years, and we've migrated a lot, if not all of our data to the cloud. And actually, we didn't tidy a lot of it up. We just stuck it there. So there's a whole range of documents that Bob wrote 10 years ago, and Bob left 8 years ago. But there's 2,000 documents that he produced sat in a SharePoint site nobody's looked at for 10 years, but the AI is going to index it. So and now Bob's contribution is a part of the language model that produces content for you. And so I think one of the points that's kind of being increasingly emphasized in my experience is that the health of your data that you're going to feed to that AI is critical. And so, and it's not going to be one of those things where you can kind of jump in, have the benefit of AI, and then go, oh, I'll fix that next year, because it's already indexed it and learned from it, right? And so you need to be thinking upfront quite clearly about how you're going to manage that challenge. How are you? And to be honest with you, let's face it, we're tackling that challenge a little bit from the security angle these days anyway, because security is not just about the kind of SOC service side of things where we sit there watching and keeping for bad stuff. It's about managing the security of your data. Have you labeled it appropriately? Is it encrypted by you and in the right places? How is it secured down? Have you made sure you're not keeping stuff you shouldn't have access to? All those GDPR regulations. So we've had all these regulations over the years that have kind of one way or another been nudging us to get better at managing our data. And I think actually AI is almost going to be the pinnacle of that, in the sense that it will truly cause you to focus on it and go, oof, we need to really make sure we've got our data in the best possible state before we pull the pin and let AI at it.
Yeah, I think you can also flip that to outside an organization. If you're on like ChatGPT or something, you need to understand, if you ask it a question, the answer it's giving you don't know where it's drawn all that information from. It's just drawn it across the whole web, I guess. So you need to understand it's that rubbish in, rubbish out, right? And you just need to know, well, actually, the origins of this information, I don't know where they are. So you just need to kind of keep that in mind. But it's been really good to get some insight into yourself and Chorus, Mark. On a closing note, what would your advice be to someone who, at this current moment in time, wants to start a business?
Yeah, as I'd say at the start, really, I mean, you know, definitely, if you think you've got all the pieces in front of you and that are going to enable you to do that, do it. Do it. Don't be shy of it, because to be honest with you, you know, much better to have tried and not had it work out than just never have tried. I'm certainly in that camp. Like I said, I think, you know, be prepared, as best prepared as you can, but you're in for a lot of surprises. Just try and make the most of it. I recently watched an interview, I don't know if you saw it, with the leader of NVIDIA, who's obviously been very successful, phenomenally successful since he founded NVIDIA. I think it was in '98, so very similar to Chorus. He's been a lot more successful, I should add. But he was interviewed recently, and he was asked, and he gave what was a seemingly very heartfelt response when he was asked, you know, would you do it all again? And he was just like, no, I wouldn't. You know, and he and again, an easy answer to give when you've been incredibly successful, but you know, he was very honest about why he ran through all the challenges. And I think what I found interesting about that was that, you know, I was kind of like, you know, he's absolutely right. All the things he pulled out, you know, the things you feel some horrible emotions at times, you know, shame because something really went horribly wrong, and you know, ultimately you are responsible for that. And those things that are gonna challenge you over the years, but if it's your thing, if you've got that fire, absolutely go for it. Absolutely go for it, because there are certainly plenty of upsides as well. Who doesn't love learning and being challenged every day? You know, it's phenomenal, to be honest. So yeah, no, I'd encourage anybody who's interested in giving it a go to do so. But as we said earlier, just make sure you've got a couple of the key questions answered as you get out of the gate, just at least make the first 6-12 months a little smoother about how you're going to get those things out. But it's going to be a fun ride, that's for sure.
Be a fun ride, an emotional roller coaster, and at the end of it, after all this success, you probably won't want to do it all again.
Exactly that. But by then it's too late, so you're done. So
you're already committed.
You're committed.
But Mark, it's been great to speak. Thanks so much for all the insight.
Indeed.
I'm sure if anyone's got any questions about Chorus or yourself, I'm sure you'd happy for them to reach out.
Absolutely.
But let's keep in touch. Thanks so much.
Indeed. Nice to meet you. Cheers, Charlie.